Jim Lee, a legendary name in comics. He's a pioneer for what the current artist landscape looks like today, has made history in both the mainstream and independent side of the industry, and was the biggest comic artist of the 90s. His superstar power could have only been described as supernova. Having a peak in the 90s into the 2000s, he would continue to remain relevant throughout the decades. If you know Lee's work, you'll know he mainly blew up from his time on X-Men, with his X-Men #1, along with Chris Claremont on writing, holding the record for the highest selling comic of all time with 8.1 million copies sold. You might also know that Lee was a founding member and an integral part for the creation of Image Comics. But what about his Spider-Man? This is a Spider-Man show after all. Well, although Lee has never worked on full-length projects for the character officially, we do have a few examples to look at. So let's analyze those, and of course, as always, ask the question, can they Spider-Man? The series where I analyze artists that draw the famous webhead, and whether they've been drawing him for years or draw him for fun, I let you know whether or not I think they can Spider-Man. The earliest examples of Lee drawing the webhead actually come from two covers from Punisher War Journal from late 1989 to early 1990. And being 100% honest, they are a bit lackluster. Now, to be fair, with issue 14, you don't get much of Spider-Man in the shot. However, in the next cover, we have Spider-Man all posed up, and again, it just doesn't feel like anything special. There's a couple things like Spidey's hands and face/mask that are kind of just jarring. Normally, Lee delivers on great details and strong line work, but this kind of feels bland and rushed. Okay, but let's just chalk it up to the fact that these were covers. Maybe Lee didn't give as much effort. He was busy with X-Men at the time, of course, and there's no interior artwork, so not too much to judge off these two examples. It's when we fast forward a little bit and see his posted commissions that we start to see a bit more of Lee's traditional style. Lee is known to mix realistic anatomy with a little bit of over-the-top features to give off a more heroic look, and I do feel like he finds a pretty decent balance with the character of Spider-Man. In poses like this sewing piece, you can see the definition and bold line work that really give off that Lee feel, and his take on the webhead's mask is a nice mixture of the big lenses along with thick outline for better expression. However, it's not all consistent. Looking at a piece like this, we get more of his approach to Spidey's anatomy, and personally, I don't really think this is a great piece. In proportion to Black Cat, which his Black Cat looks amazing in this by the way, Spider-Man just looks massive. The pose feels static and his arms are super long. The definition and the torso looks fine, but everything else just seems ridiculously proportioned. Now, Lee works best with dynamic pacing and paneling. Shots where action is at its peak and it feels like an orchestrated climax matching the energy of any cinematic moment. And luckily we partially get that with this piece where Spider-Man is fighting Doc Ock. And here his Spider-Man feels more reeled in. At the cost, however, is the unique feel of Lee's style, where his Doc Ock looks amazing and feels Jim Lee with an amazing background. His Spider-Man feels less energetic and again, a bit static. Don't get me wrong, it's a great piece, but unfortunately, the best part of it isn't Spider-Man. It just seems that with the examples we have so far, we don't get to see the full potential with Lee on Spider-Man. Now, I'm not fully blaming Lee, as after his initial work on Marvel, he would move to Image, as mentioned, work a tiny bit again with Marvel on Fantastic Four, and then fully adjust to DC. Since then, Lee has stayed at DC with a few exceptions here and there, with all that to say that his experience with the character is obviously low, and Lee doesn't seem like the person to be passionate about the webhead, so it's also not like he's drawing the guy all the time. There's a lot of factors as to why Lee's Spidey just doesn't seem to hit as much, at least for me. I do, however, think that when Lee is working on something more important and demanding of his full talent, we do get a really great Spider-Man. Example, this piece we were talking about earlier is actually from a Comic-Con poster he worked on, which I'm sure he put extra time and effort for how special this event is, and it looks great, even better when it's fully colored. Definitely the best Spider-Man we've seen from him, at least until most recent. That's right, a few months back, Jim unveiled his homage piece of Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man #1, and this is what I would want from a Jim Lee Spider-Man. I love the build and the details. You can see a little bit of the scrunch on the face that looks cool. It's obviously an iconic pose for the character, and most importantly, with the shadows and bold line work, it feels like Jim Lee. It takes all the best parts of the previous examples and shows that if enough effort and time is put into it, Lee can produce some amazing Spider-Man art. I definitely would love to peek into a world where Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane switched careers and see if ultimately Lee would have produced more of this cool looking webhead. Overall, Jim Lee is obviously an amazing artist, but his style is more akin to characters that are more godly and heroic. To try to get that feeling with the grounded, friendly neighborhood character of Spider-Man, you have to either do something so drastically different or catch the vibe of what the character's already been worked with while still being able to add your own unique artistic flair. Regardless, I do hope in the future that Jim Lee draws more of Spider-Man, especially in a higher effort like this Todd McFarlane homage. But what do you guys think of Jim Lee's Spider-Man? Let me know down below. Thanks so much for watching, and subscribe for more.